Good evening, sports fans. Actually, just kidding. It's morning. Good morning, sports fans. Witch Hat 3 and 4. We left off with Agate and Coco captured by the Knights Morales, and the Knights were going to erase Coco's memory. Oh no, who's going to save them? Is one of the adults going to come in? Bam! It's Richa with the steel chair tackling a cop. And it was in this moment that I knew she is my favorite of the girls. And oh, Richa is pissed because the fantasy cops are treating children like things instead of people. Richa and Tetia come to the rescue, and Kifri is not far behind. He actually holds a sword to the cop's neck. And while they're arguing, Orugio is down on the ground doing his job, doing all of their jobs, actually helping people. But with all the help that Orugio and the girls are able to do on the ground, there's one glaring thing that they can't do. They can't heal anybody's injuries. They can do some basic first aid and make sure that everyone's okay, but they can't heal. And Custis, the kid that was trapped under the boulder, his legs are messed up, and all they can do is splint them and send him off to the hospital. Once all the normies are out of the way, the cops have Coco draw the seal that she drew on the stone in the riverbed, and everything appears normal. I forgot if I mentioned that in the first video, but yeah, when Coco drew that seal on the stone to crumble the stone and save Custis, for some reason, the whole riverbed turned to crumbled stone as well. The spell extended far beyond the targeted object. Only now do the cops do a proper investigation instead of just barging in and wiping the memory of who they assume to be a perpetrator. So the cops let them off with a warning, and Kifri gives the girls a little talking to, stressing the importance of keeping the secret of magic safe, because what they did was very reckless. They're not authorized to cast magic in public, and if anyone had found out, they would have had to erase the memories of all of those people there. Kifri says every mind is different, containing an accumulation of matters unique to each person. Each mind is that person's knowledge, experience, their past, their very life itself. Your actions put those treasures at stake. And he really stresses we do not want to have to erase someone's memory unless it's absolutely necessary. As the whole gang packs up to leave, Kifri finds Coco's dropped ink bottle. But there's something odd about it. She's been casting spells, but it's still completely full. And then we see in like the wasteland somewhere, the eyeball witch cutting their hand open and dripping blood into an identical bottle to Coco's ink. Kifri immediately sniffs out something that's wrong, and so he has Orugio take the other three girls back home and goes off to the stationer's with Coco. At the stationer's, Coco goes upstairs to hang out with the stationer's apprentice, Tarta. And they're up in the like apothecary section of the store that has a lot of different bottles full of tinctures and powders that are all ink additives that can cause spells to do different things. And Kifri's downstairs with the stationer, Mr. Nolnoa, and Nolnoa doesn't recognize what's in the ink bottle that he just sold to Coco. And so Kifri, against everyone's better judgment, whips out some paper and draws up a spell with the ink. It was a light spell, but instead of a glowing orb, it's a big explosion. This confirms Kifri's suspicion. It's a twinned bottle spell. There's a little piece of glass with a seal on it inside Coco's bottle, and there's another bottle somewhere that's connected to it, and these two bottles are sharing the same ink supply. The big explosion, though, knocked over a bunch of jars upstairs, and the labels came off. And now Tarta's panicking because he can't remember which one was which. That's when we and Coco learn that he is colorblind. And the reason that he's not a witch apprentice, and he's just the stationer's apprentice, is because of his disability, he has been barred from witch apprenticeship. Downstairs, Kifri seems strangely overjoyed at the discovery of the twinned ink bottles, and Mr. Nolnoa insists they have to report to the Great Hall. Kifri says, no, we have to keep this a secret. And Nolnoa's like, no, this is too big. We can't. And then Kifri looks like this. He says, I'm sorry, Mr. Nolnoa. I hope you can forgive me. And then, bam, we cut to Kifri and Coco having a normal conversation outside. Kifri, what is your definition of absolutely necessary? Playing a little fast and loose with the rules. The fact that he was so willing to do that tells me that he is accustomed to wiping people's memories. He doesn't seem super conflicted or guilty about it. In a small way, he does, because right after he starts acting very very sweet to Coco, and I think that's a compensatory action on his part. He's being very nice to someone else to make up for the fact that he did something very wrong to someone. But the fact that he didn't have too much grief over it tells me that he does this often, or at least often enough that it doesn't really weigh on him. And Kifri and Coco talk about Tarta's colorblindness and how unfair it is for witches to place so much weight on visual acuity, that a simple colorblindness is enough to exclude you from society. We'll come back to this. I have a lot of thoughts about Kifri and sight. But then Tarta goes downstairs to Mr. Nilnoa, who's his grandfather, and he's like, "Hey, Grandpa, what was that big flash of light?" And Grandpa's like, "Hmm, what light?" Next chapter, we learn a little bit about the tests that witches must take. There are 5 of them, but only 4 of them are mandatory. After the first test, you get to choose your teacher. After the second test, you get permission to cast spells in public. After the third, you get approval to attempt the librarian's trial. And the fourth test, after which you graduate. The fifth, an optional test, gives you the ability to take on students. And notably, these 5 tests are shaped in a giant star across the land, which could mean nothing. But I've read Fullmetal Alchemist. Through this conversation about tests, we learned that Riche really hates tests. While Agate looks forward to her tests to be able to prove herself and move up in the ranks, Riche says tests are stupid. I don't want to be told what to do, to be forced by someone else to draw someone else's spells that I don't want to draw, because I don't want anybody to change the way that I am. And she gets up and walks away. It's not an outburst, but it's a bit of strong emotion from Riche that we don't normally see, because she's usually very quiet and deadpan. That night, Coco has a nightmare about her mother turning to stone and the brimmed caps and all kinds of things. And Kifri, while the girls are asleep, locks himself in the atelier's tower and starts investigating that twin bottle. He tries to pull the glass shard that has the seal on it out, but it's basically booby trapped. And as soon as he pulls it out, lightning strikes, and then the entire tower starts flooding with water. And remember, he hates water, possibly even to the point of having like some kind of phobia or trauma. Part of that, we learn, is because if he's underwater, magic is useless. Of course, you can't draw when you're underwater and everything's soaking wet. And when he's sufficiently drowned enough, all the water sucks back into the bottle, and boom, the eyeball witch is there, levitating above him. Kifri almost seems to recognize this person. It's not like he can see their face, but he seems to have some kind of familiarity with the members of the Brimcaps. The eyeball person smashes the jar and disappears. And Kifri is defeated, sopping wet, choking, coughing, dying on the ground. In his anger, he swears to get back what has been taken from him. The eye, I'm certain, but I'm certain it's more than that. And I know that it hasn't been confirmed that he's missing his eye, but like, all signs point to that. It's missing, and or there's some kind of curse on it. We'll get around to that later. Coco has been staying up late trying to fix Agate's sylph shoes because she kind of ruined them when she went to go take her first test. She redraws the seals and returns them to Agate, and Agate doesn't see this as a gesture of kindness. She's like, "What's your angle? Like, what do you want from me? You took that test that I tricked you into, and you could have got really hurt, but you didn't tell on me. You didn't tell Kifri what happened, and now you're doing this nice thing for me. Like, what's your problem?" And Coco's just like, I just wanted to prove that I could do things on my own with my own ingenuity and my own power and give myself hope. And Agate's like, I don't know if I believe you. I don't think you're unbothered about this. And conveniently, Coco then just passes out. So Agate runs to get Kifri, who is out in the garden. Well, she doesn't run. She flies. And smacks into him, and they almost fall off a cliff because the Coco didn't quite do the seals on Agate's shoes right. So Kifri rushes Coco to the hospital. They fly into town, and he doesn't exactly know where the hospital is because it's not like he's in town all that much. But they run into Tarta, who helps them find the way. And with Coco safely shuttled off to a nurse, Tarta's like, "Hey, Mr. Kifri, I have a question for you." And Kifri, the manipulator, is like, "Oh my gosh, I love to hear it. I'll answer any of your questions. I love to be a teacher, not just to my apprentices, but to everyone." because obviously he was going to ask him, hey, what's up with my grandpa? And Tarta's like, never mind. I'll ask you later. His hide sort of gets saved by the nurse coming in and giving Kiefer an update on Coco. It's just a cold, nothing too serious, but she's going to stay at the hospital overnight. Coco's just been going through a lot lately and not getting a lot of sleep, and the nurse puts a little bit of that blame on Kiefer, her teacher and caretaker. And Kiefer, one visually impaired person to another, Kiefer tells Tarta, unfortunately, our bodies and minds don't always behave the way that we want them to. Like a lot of witches and non-witches alike, Kiefer seems pretty conflicted about the fact that magic can't be used to heal people. Kiefer gets dragged away from the hospital to go help put out a fire, leaving Tarta alone with Coco. And Coco seems to be not doing so hot, but Tarta's a bit of an apothecary, and so he's like, I'll just get her some of the medicine that can help cool her fever. Also, there's no nurses around. He opens the drawer and can't tell what anything is because nothing in the hospital is labeled. This is egregious. This is terrible. Everyone in book club was like, why? Why the hell would you do that? I think a very easy solution is just to have everything labeled in a medical shorthand that the kids can't read. Because someone's going to die. This is a terrible system. Someone is going to die. And Tarta starts feeling insane because he's like, why is the world built for everyone but me? Why does everyone assume that everyone can see and understand the world the same way? But Coco comes up with the idea to craft a spell to reverse crush the medical components. So basically, what she had done before was she drew a spell to put on the boulder to crush it down to dust, right? So by inverting that spell, she might be able to reconstruct these powders into the plants and herbs that they once were. It doesn't really work as planned. The plants don't really reconstitute themselves, but an image of what they look like is able to be conjured. And so then Tarta is able to go into the storeroom, find the exact leaf he's looking for, and feel the euphoria of finally managing something that you weren't capable of before. The doctors obviously aren't happy that he's like getting into all their stuff. He gets caught and they're like, hey, you haven't been medically trained. Don't give anybody anything if you don't know exactly what it does. And I'm like, yeah, guys, label your stuff. That's just insane to me. Tarta kind of accidentally spends the night in the hospital with Coco. He just falls asleep. And Kiefer stays there with the kids. In the morning, Coco's good to go back home. So Kiefer takes Tarta back to his grandpa. And with both of the adults from the incident in front of him, Tarta asks, hey, guys, what was with that light? And both Grandpa and Kiefer are like, what light? I didn't see a light. And now Tarta's like believing the gaslighting. He's like, maybe there was no explosion. But on the way home, Coco thinks, well, if all it takes to reverse a spell is to just draw it in reverse, if I can get my eyes on that petrification spell that petrified my mom, and then just draw that in reverse, maybe that will be enough to save her. And then on the last page of volume 3, we get this visual of another brimmed cap. This one looking like an empty husk in a cloak and cap. Okay, number 4. We start with Agate flying around, getting accustomed to her new, very fast shoes. And she observes that scale wolves, which is basically just like a wolf with a lot of scales on it, during their breeding season, they run around and smash into each other and knock the scales off of each other because the newborn pups would be injured by the tough scales. And Agate's like, wow, if they didn't feel the need to pair up and have community, they could simply keep their armor on all the time. Likely thing for Agate to say. At the atelier, everyone is studying. Orujo is napping on the couch, very dad of him. Kiefer tells Coco that her expertise is straight lines. She's very good at drawing long straight lines, and that's probably what made Agate's shoes so fast. Coco tries to get Riche to come study spells with her, but Riche says, no, I don't like looking at spells. I like to draw, but I don't want to study. And when Coco and even Kiefer prod her a little more, Riche has an outburst. She draws a big spell and it causes these crystals to erupt from the table that she's at. And when Kiefer warns her not to cast spells in anger, she gets up and runs away. Coco follows her to her room to try to apologize and finds like a little secret hideout that she's made underground, full of flowers and these beautiful crystal ribbons. That's Riche's own spell. when Coco asks Riche, hey, what's up? Like, why don't you want to study other people's spells? Riche repeats something we heard her say last volume. I don't want other people telling me what to do, and I don't want myself and my magic to be tainted by someone else's instructions or expectations or spells. Kefri cleans up the mess that Riche's spell made, and he and Orugio talk about the girls. Kefri tells us that before Riche came to study with him, she was with a different teacher, and Riche broke her apprenticeship with that teacher. Orugio gives Kefri a contraption he's been working on. Snugstones. They're like little slices of geode that keep a person warm. They're for like sticking under your pillow or in your bed while you sleep so that you sleep well. And when Kefri admires these spells, how kind and thoughtful Orugio is with his creations, Orugio gets kind of flustered and a little tsundere, and he's like, don't get the wrong idea. I'm just doing this for work. It's not like I like you guys or anything. Like, okay, come on. We all know. I just love this exchange. It's so funny because Orugio's like, oh, I made these. Can you give them to the girls? We'll see how everyone likes them, and if they're good, then I'll just make more, and then a new contraption will hit the market. And Kefri's like, hey, you gave me 5 of these, and Orugio's like, yeah. Magical fax machine hits us with a letter. Test 2 has been scheduled, and we are off to Cape Romanon. We get a little flashback of a very young Riche with her brother before either of them were apprentices. And Riche's working on her spells, and he's like, wow, Riche, you're so smart. I love your spells. They're just like you. I hope you never change. I'm sure that wasn't completely formative and life-changing and soul-defining for Riche, but here we are. The little family, minus Orugio, takes a overnight carriage to Cape Romanon. Everybody slept so good thanks to the Snugstones. We eat a little breakfast. We meet up with the other test takers. There's a witch there named Kukro and his apprentice, Uini. One look at these guys tells you kind of all you need to know. Kukro sucks and should be fired. I'm sure it's one of those situations though where like you can't be fired because you're part of the union. Because like, okay, my whole family, we're all educators. My dad has been part of the teachers union for like forever. Obviously, a union, great thing. We love it. But when I was reading this and like seeing how bad Kukro sucks, but they like can't really do much about it, I kept thinking about the teachers union because the teachers union wants to make sure that like everybody has a job, right? And so once you're in the union, even if you suck as a teacher, unless you've done something like heinous or morally like wrong or illegal, they can't just like fire you. They have to like give you a position somewhere. They can like demote you, but it takes a lot to get the teachers out. And so seeing how poor of a teacher Kukro is, I haven't even gotten into the details, but you'll see. Seeing how poor of a teacher he is, and yet he still has students, I'm like, legit, the only reason he still has his job is because he's in the union and they can't really get rid of him. What do you know about this? Jugo de Coco Asado. This stuff is fire. Uini is like anxiety personified, and Kukro is just like this evil hag, and I say hag gender neutrally. Speaking of gender neutral, I love how the gender neutral uniform for all witches is a dress. Nobody's saying it's not a dress, it's a robe because a man's wearing it. No. Everybody's wearing dresses. We all get fancy dresses. It's awesome. Look at this. Like, Uini has that on. Uini, who's a bit older than the girls, he's failed this test twice, and this is his 3rd time taking it. And Kukro rolls up just being like, oh, hey, Kefri, with your apprentice who's from the House of Arklum, because, like, Agate's from a well-known witch house. Wow, I'd love to trade my apprentice for yours. And Kefri's like, pardon? Our children are not things to be traded. And Kukro's like, I know, doesn't it suck? You can't even send them in for repairs. Not what he meant. But Uini's like, no, he's right. It's all my fault. I keep messing up. I'm a terrible excuse for an apprentice, and I'm always causing trouble. And then our good friend Elira shows up to proctor the exam. I don't think I mentioned her last time. She's a friend of Kefri's. The point of this exam is to cast spells without being discovered, to guide your Merfin, which is like a penguin, griffin, bird creature, through this cave. Both of you must arrive at the exit safely, and you can't be seen casting any spells. Test takers put on cloaks of disguise that make them look like the Merfins. basically what happened, like a long time ago, magic created this weird cave and disrupted the habitat of these native creatures. It is now the duty of witches to seasonally guide these creatures through the cave because it was witches who disrupted their habitat in the first place. I think that's really beautiful. I really like that. So Elira's like, all right, you three, let's go. Pause. Three? And Kiefer's like, yeah, Riche, I signed you up for the test. Ooh. Oh, we hate to see it. We hate to see it. I mean, he didn't really have a better choice. Like, she needs to take this test, but yeah, like, it doesn't feel good. And she feels so betrayed. She's like, I thought you were different from all the other grown ups. I thought I could trust you. And Kiefer, in his most excellent parenting style, he kneels down in front of Riche, not to be at her level, but to actually be lower than her, so that she can talk down to him. And he says, I know. I I know you. I know who you are. I know the things that you want. I'm not about to dismiss your desires. Basically just says, because I know you and I love you, I want you to take this test because I know that you will learn things that will lead you to greater understanding and will lead you on to be able to have the kind of life that you want to lead. So I'm asking you to trust me just for today. And it works. This whole scene just made me want to cry. Wow. It works. Riche says, okay, I'm not happy with you, but I will take the test the way that I want to take it. And if I don't like it, I'm not going to try it again. She says, if this makes me not me anymore, I will never believe another word you say to me again. It's just so heartbreaking. Like, I get it. I get it from the child side and the adult side. She goes off to take the exam. And Kuko's like, wow, you have a problem child too. The kids are such a chore, aren't they? And Kiefer's like, y'all hear some? Like, he just ignores this guy, and then the guy gets so embarrassed that he just like ups and leaves. And they're like, hey, you're not gonna wait for your apprentice? And Kuko's like, basically like, no, I don't care. Cool, cool. Kiefer's like, Uini, you have the power to get yourself out of this situation. As the apprentice, you are allowed to choose your teacher, and that means when you don't want your teacher anymore, you can request a new one. And Yuini's like, no, it's me. I'm always the problem. I'll go somewhere else and it'll just be the same story because I'm just going to keep messing up. It's me. I'm the problem. And Kiefer and Elira are like, they can put in a report at the Great Hall, but ultimately it is the apprentice's choice under whom they study. If Uni's not going to take the initiative to try to get a new teacher, not much is to be done. I really like that on paper. I think that giving the apprentice the choice of the teacher is really awesome and really gives kids a lot of agency. But then you run into the problem of sort of these abusive type relationships where the person who is being abused or mistreated doesn't see that they have the power to leave because they're so convinced that the problem is themselves or that it wouldn't change anything or the mistreatment is what's comfortable and so they stay there in that. And so I see the vision giving the child their ultimate choice of teacher. But at the same time, in extreme cases, I think there needs to be some kind of like CPS, like, hey, we're taking you away from this teacher, or possibly even like barring this teacher from being able to teach students in extreme cases. Because the thing about like them being at the Great Hall is that I don't think they have watchful eyes. I think watchful eyes only get assigned to the scattered like outside ateliers. The thought is, well, because everyone's living here in the community in the center of things, we don't need the watchful eyes. But I do think that it would make sense for each teacher to have a paired watchful eye and not someone that they get to choose, somebody that like is assigned to them to be able to intervene and say, hey, we need to change things or put a stop to this here. All that to say, I really love this whole thing, not just the system of apprentices and witches and trying to make sure that the apprentices are cared for and just all these discussions raised of like child protection and agency and teaching and the system and all of that. But I also just really like that we get to see ways in which that system, while well-meaning, fails and ways that different students can flourish or falter underneath that system. Okay, so this cave that they're going through for the test is not just any old cave. It's a winding serpentine road that twists and turns. And gravity's all wonky. So while Agate and Riche are taking the test, Kifri camps out with Coco and Tetia, and he catches them some fish for breakfast. Shout out to my dad. And tells them the story of the lost country of Romanon. Very fancy, high society, very wealthy, very affluent, very intellectual. They were like, hey, we don't want anybody that's not worth something coming into our country. Does this sound familiar to you? So we're going to create this like maze cave thing where only people that are really smart or only people that can use magic well can get in. And so the Serpent's Road was crafted to keep the unworthy out. But at some point, the Romanons started looking at their own society and they were like, hey, we have people in here that are old. We have people in here that are ugly, that are disabled, that don't contribute in ways that we want them to contribute. So, what do we do about that? Well, everyone that we don't like, we're going to turn them into golden statues so that if they were leeches on society before, well, now at least they can be like pretty decorations. The story goes that the society eventually crumbled under the weight of its own masses of gold. Romanon's own bigotry killed itself. Kifri says mankind is truly terrifying, as is the fact that so few of us acknowledge how easily terrifying things may come to pass. Meanwhile, in the cave, taking the test, the kids are kind of figuring out their way. Elira is there to make sure nothing really bad happens, but she can't help out the kids, right? She's the proctor. Agate's not really having any trouble. She's smart enough to figure out how to stay on the road. But Uini keeps putting all this emphasis on the right spell, and he has to do things the right way. And it's really starting to piss Riche off. Her teacher did not foster any of her creativity and punished her for not doing things the quote-unquote right way. And so that's why she's so obsessed with not letting anyone tell her what to do or letting anyone else's spells taint her magic, because she values what she can do. She doesn't want to be told what's the right and wrong way to do things, because most of the time, there's way more than one right way to do something. Uini's insistent that they must cast a spell to mimic the Merfin's calls to guide them along with them. But Riche is like, don't tell me what to do. And she instead casts her crystal ribbon spell and uses that as a shiny distraction to get the Merfins to follow her. She tells Uini, you may have taken this test before, but that doesn't mean that you know the right way to do things. Uini's so caught up in the way things are, and he hasn't been helped by teachers that insist that there's one right way to take a test. He kind of starts to freak out. And for all of Agate's aloofness, she doesn't really seem to have a problem with Riche. She's not mean to her the way she was mean to Coco at the beginning. She's just like, you can take the test however you want, Riche. Like, it's none of my business. Then they reach a section of the road that's fallen apart. And it wasn't like this last year. And so Uini is completely unprepared for it. The girls are able to make it across using their own ingenuity. But Uini just breaks down because he's like, I can't come up with anything. I can't draw in front of people. At all my pre-drawn spells, I was so prepared. I had all the right answers. But now there's a part of the test that I wasn't prepared for. And when he's panicking, he says, if I could, I'd find a way to stop being me. I wish I could be anyone else. He's just kind of sitting there in the middle of the road with the other two test takers and the proctor staring at him. And he can't bring himself to draw because he's being watched. So he hides under his cloak and mopes and then peeks out of his cloak because he's certain that they're laughing at him. But no one's laughing at him. Everyone here wants to see him succeed, unlike his own teacher. That's when it kind of hits him that the only person putting him in this place is himself. So he alters the seal on his camouflage cloak to instead turn it to a cloak of darkness. And so now that he's hidden in the darkness and no one can see him, he finds it easier to cast his own spells. He's figured out his own way of doing things. When he makes it across the gap, Riche walks up to him and she says, "Are you done hating yourself?" She's so awesome. And now things are going pretty good. And then, bam, Brimcap. The empty brimmed cap spirits Elira away, leaving these three children alone on the road. Elira blows her hat away before she's captured, and a gust of wind sends it out of the cave all the way to Kifri, and he knows this is a big problem. Witches don't lose their caps. And so he's like, okay, girls, I'm going to call Rugio. He's going to take you home. And then the road comes to life. and it crashes down onto Kifri and the girls. Kifri is severely injured in the back and head by falling rocks. They fall down into this chasm. The girls and Yuini, they start making their escape. Agate coats the entire road with ice, and they get on a stone and start sliding away. It's a really ingenious plan, but they're not going fast enough. They need some extra wind, and that's when it hits Riche that she doesn't actually know any other spells other than her own. So Yuini hands her his pre-made spells that he prepped for this test. And now it's Riche's turn to learn that her way of doing things isn't always the right way either. Sometimes you do have to rely on what you can learn from other people. Agate then decides to try to take a stand, not to fight, but she realizes that the Brimcaps are after them because they're after Coco. She jumps off and tries to tell the Brimmed Cap Coco isn't here. She's not even at our atelier anymore. We sent her home and erased her memories, and you're wasting your time. Obviously, the Brimmed Cap does not buy it. He is about to start to tattoo something into Agate's arm, which is, as I'm sure you can imagine, extremely forbidden. Riche throws her a rope of stone. Agate grabs on, and then Yuini blows up the bridge underneath the Brimmed Cap. But there's kind of a problem, because Sylph Shoes and flying spells don't work in this cave, but the Brimmed Cap has been flying around regardless, so blowing up the bridge did not actually help. And now, Yuini is in the clutches of the Brimmed Cap, and the girls cannot find him. When they do find him, he's been horribly transformed into Full Metal Alchemist. Full Metal Alchemist. Because he was wearing a cloak made of scale wolf skin, whatever transformation spell the Brimmed Cap put on him wove the wolf into him. The Brimmed Cap disappears. Now the two girls are left with their disfigured friend who runs away. Riche wants to chase after Yuini, but Agate tells her, you don't have the skill set to try to save him. We have a responsibility to get these little penguin creatures out of here. So you take the Murphins to the exit. I'll go find Yuini. Coco and Tetia and Kifri and Brush Buddy, he's here too, survived their big fall, but Kifri is in really bad shape. His glasses are broken, he's bleeding from his head, his back, but the girls are okay. Coco goes to reach for his glasses, and Kifri grabs her hand and smacks it away and has this just haunted expression on his face. That is so out of character. That is not a way that Kifri acts towards children. That is not a way that someone reacts if they just have an ugly scar that they don't want to be seen. Something is up with this guy, and it is not good. And then some shapes in the shadows start to move. Some golden shapes. That's right, the Romanon statues are here. They are still alive. They are coming for us. Kifri is in horrible shape, but he stands up and he gets ready to fight. And that's where we end. And that's where the show ends also. Wow. Okay, guys. Sorry for the change in lighting and outfit and frame and everything. I filmed that first section right before I had to go to work, and I was like, oh, I'll just film when I get back from work. I got back from work and I was having mic troubles, and I was like, okay, whatever, I'll just film tomorrow. And then I woke up with a sore throat the next morning. I had a sore throat with no other symptoms except like some body aches and maybe a slight fever for about 2 days. And now I'm fine. So, what was that? Clap if you understand this reference. I really got to start writing stuff down and reading off a script because that recap took way too long. I'm figuring it out, okay? I don't want to waste your time, you guys. But I'm trying to figure out how to do this without it taking up a ton of my time as well. And writing scripts takes a long time. Whatever. If my voice cracks, no, it didn't. I haven't spoken in 2 days. Okay, but like, can we at least get a vibe in here? I'm not wearing a fun outfit. My room is a mess. It's about 1,000 degrees upstairs. Can't run the fan because my mic's on. Can't open the windows. Because, girl, the wasps keep coming in my house, my room. Anyway, you're not here to listen to me complain. Well, but no, you're here for my thoughts on the past 2 weeks of book club. Huge theme picking up in these next few volumes is the treatment of children as whole people and not just things. It's not just Kukro who has a problem respecting kids. It's Riche's former teacher, and it seems to be fairly widespread in the Great Hall if these teachers are allowed to continue operating like this. We even see it with Isis and the Knights Moralis. He kind of speaks of the four apprentices as if they're Kifri's belongings and not, his wards, his students. Another thing I noticed, Kifri, he's very aware of his body in any given situation. When Itzies and the Knights Morales are coming for Coco, Kifri puts himself physically between Coco and the police. And that's something I noticed from like the very get-go of this manga. He is very conscious of how he appears. He's a tall man, right? And that can be very intimidating. But he does his best to be as reassuring physically as possible. And it shows because his girls will like run and hide behind him. He will put himself physically between the girls and any danger, or when he needs to speak to them, he will kneel down or sit down to talk with them on their level. Let's talk about some things that I love about El Rugio. Number one, I love his bad posture. Number two, I love that he's a short king. Number three, I love that he doesn't lose sight of the true goals of magic. When Kifri is dealing with Itzies and the Knights, El Rugio is on the ground helping people. Magic is for the people. He's not getting caught up in all this bureaucracy. He even calls it out. He's like, hey guys, there's people here who are injured. We're supposed to be helping them. Let's talk about something I don't like about El Rugio. His facial hair. That thing looks glued on. I may or may not have a piece of art that I'm working on about this. Stay tuned. Let's talk about Kifri. He is very impulsive, actually. Not someone you would expect to be impulsive, but he kind of just goes headlong into danger when it comes to the brimmed caps, erasing Noah's memory and testing out the twinned bottle thing in the atelier and using the ink. All of that is very reckless behavior, and I would think that for someone with 4 daughters, he would be less reckless than that. But it's something that I really like, because I like it when a sweetheart of a character has something about them that's a little bit nasty. And Kifri can get nasty. The way that he so coldly erased Noah's memory. And Tarta was a little bit scared of him for a minute, too. He saw something very cold in his eyes. Now, okay, speaking of eyes, I think that just must be a figure of speech, because I'm still riding on the belief that Kifri is missing an eye, okay? All signs point to that, until proven otherwise. He has a visual disability, like Tarta. So their conversations are very interesting to me, especially when Kifri is telling Tarta that our bodies don't always work the ways that we want to. Both of them are visually impaired. Even if Kifri isn't missing an eye, he wears glasses. That's indicative of some kind of visual impairment, nearsightedness or farsightedness. And so I wonder if Kifri also has experienced some kind of discrimination or just barriers to entry when he was younger or whenever he lost his eye, trying to be taken seriously as a practicing witch because he has this impairment. And another little bit of Kifri's nasty streak, he's so motivated to get something from the brim caps, to get something back, to get something out of them. Like, I can't help but wonder if it's just plain simple revenge. I think that would be really fun for something so plain and mean to be his motivation for all of this. Because his beef with the Brimcaps is personal. It's not just ideological or on principle. It is very personal. I'm a -6 in both eyes, and I can see that, okay? He knows so much more than we are being told. My personal theory is that he was brought up in them. He is either related to or was apprenticed to the Brimmed Caps. Like, he came out of them. He spent time with them as a child, and something from him was taken. His eye, possibly more. And I've been thinking a lot, too, about the role of magic in the world. How that can be kind of mapped to the role of an education in our world. This is completely off script. I have not said any of this to anyone. I have not said this in any of my notes, but here we go. This is what we're here for, right? The role of magic in the world. A lot of people have different ideas of what it's for. It's for power, it's for control, it's for helping people, it's for providing joy, it's for making the world more vibrant, right? I think what it really comes down to, though, is service. All of those things can be wrapped up in this idea of service. I keep coming back to Tetia kneeling in front of the golden Romanon woman. Oh, wait, that's from Volume 5. I can't talk about this yet. My bad. Magic is meant to serve the people. And so witches, as the ones who carry magic, are public servants. Whatever they do must be done for the public good. Not for some nebulous ultimate greater good, not for the good of witches, but for the good of people. I could almost think of them as politicians, where the role of a politician is to represent and serve their constituents. But that gets corrupted. A politician is now synonymous with people who lie and pursue power. Whether magic is to bring people joy or to help people or to innovate or to provide a service, like I really think it all comes down to that idea of service and how that might tie into the role of an education. Why are we educated? Why do we go to school? It's not to get a job, although that's what people may tell you. But a well educated society allows people to serve each other. It's a community building thing. When everyone can read and write and do math, everyone can communicate with each other. Everyone can do business. Everyone can collaborate. Everyone can befriend. And you get some people who specialize in a certain field, even if there are other things that might motivate someone to go into that field. Maybe you want to become a doctor because of the money. Sure. But what is it at the heart of doctoring? Service, helping people, healing people. And like, this is a thesis that has just come to me now that I've barely worked on, that is just a few things strung together, but I really think there's something there. If we could stop thinking of our lives and our skill sets as things that put us above other people, and instead think of what we are able to do as something that is for the public good, to think of yourself as a public servant, I think the world would be a much better place. That kind of greedy mindset is something that I physically cannot do in my field of education. I can't just go to work and zone out and get my paycheck. Every day, I have to show up and use my mind, my education that I've been given to serve these children, to give them their education so they can go out into the world and serve the world. And I think that the character that understands this the most is Elrugio. I'm not entirely sure what Kiefer's motivated by, but it's not necessarily the public good. It's something more selfish than that. Coco's motivated by wonder and curiosity. Tetia wants to be thanked. She is very close there, I think, to Elrugio's mindset. Out of all the girls, Riche wants to be fully herself. Agate wants to be the best she can be. But I really think it's Elrugio that gets it the most. I'll be eager to see where this theme goes in the future and how I continue to conceptualize it and iterate on it. In the Volume 3 discussion, we had an excellent little essay from Aurelia about the themes of teaching and learning and authority and ability and disability. This essay compares Witch Hat to A Wizard of Earthsea, which is a great series, or standalone if you just want to read it as a standalone. I would highly recommend that to anyone who likes Witch Hat. It's an old one, an old classic from Ursula K. Le Guin. It was written in the 60s, and she was very adamant about the fact that her main character was a person of color. And it's set in like an island archipelago. It's really cool. Give it a shot. It's not too long. And then also, this essay makes a few comparisons to Harry Potter, which I loved how scathing this was. Harry Potter adopts the pedagogy of British boarding schools wholesale and seems aggressively uninterested in how that method of instruction works or if it works. Go off. Yeah, a story like that, the school is just the setting. There's nothing interesting happening there with schooling or teaching or learning or anything. This story, Witch Hat, is so interested in education and how education works and what a good education is and what a bad education is and how to be a good teacher, how to be good to kids, and from the children's side of things, how to learn. How do you stay yourself when you're being filled with so much information? How do you navigate things you can't understand and the things you're good at and the things that you're better than other people at? And your peer relationships and your mentor relationships. Oh, it's just so good. It's so rich. I would highly recommend reading this post. I'll put like a link to it somewhere. I'm losing my voice because I haven't talked in 2 days. Yu, our paneling expert, gave an interesting recommendation for Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics, The Invisible Art, for learning about the technicalities of paneling. Great recommendation. Let's add that to the reading list, add that to the syllabus, along with A Wizard of Earthsea. Yu's posts are always super awesome, going in depth into all the different little paneling things. I don't really get the chance to talk about them in these videos because they are so in depth with all the pictures and all of that. And I'm mostly talking about like themes and literary analysis, but it's super worth it to crack open the volume, read Yu post, and go like panel by panel and look at all the interesting stuff that they're pointing out. It's awesome, especially if you're not someone that's very artistic or art minded, and you would never even pick up on all these things, or even if you are, I think it just opens up a whole world. I'm gonna keep plugging Yu posts because just like even this one, everybody was so gagged by this panel of Keyfree when he's about to draw with the forbidden ink, of how he's like shaded, he's completely still. Usually his ribbon flies around him. It's very animated, it's very lively, but it just hangs there like a dead weight. He's kind of, the panel's askew as if he's interrupting, like he's doing something he's not supposed to, but it's very still at the same time, like everything's holding its breath. And every panel breakdown is like that. Go read Yu's posts. As I move into thinking more about Volume 4, there's a big theme here that I think is awesome, but I also take some issue with. And that's the idea of your weaknesses becoming your strengths, which I think is a good idea and I think is valid, but can be very frustrating when you have a weakness or a disability or a tendency that can't really be turned into a strength. I had a really horrible personal instance of this last week that I'm not going to go into the details of, but it was like truly there is no way that I can spin this to have a bright side. It purely just sucks, and it's something that I can't help and I can't control, and it just sucks, and there's nothing to be done about it. I think it's awesome for people when the fact that I can't do the same things as everyone else might be the key that leads to only things I can do. That's so awesome. But I also just want to say you can't rely on that. There are often ways for you to sort of twist your shortcomings into some kind of strength, but not all the time. And so you need to have grace for yourself when that can't happen. But I'm really loving so far how this story gives each of the girls plenty of focus time and plenty of character development. I feel like we haven't quite got there with Tetia yet. What I was really afraid of happening when I first cracked open the book was we have this fun little cohort of 4. I would hate to see 2 or 3 of them sidelined in favor of 1 or 2 more major characters. And so far that hasn't happened. I'm sure we'll get a little more on Tetia in future volumes, but also at the same time, she is the most happy-go-lucky. Not that she doesn't have anything else going on, but like everyone else seems to have some major problems to work through, and that's where the character development comes from and the focus time. Maybe not so much with Tetia. That's not to say that nothing will happen, though. But I'm very happy with the balance that we've got so far. Something Zahro pointed out in her Volume 4 post is regarding Riche's first outburst at the beginning of that volume, where she casts that spell and blows up the table with crystals. She feels safe enough around Keyfree to get angry like that in front of him. That's so big. That's so huge. It's not an indication that she hates him or is scared of him or anything. It's actually an indication that she trusts him. Wow. I'm seeing sort of a greater pattern here within the story where we'll have people at 2 extremes of an ideal, or 2 extremes of a spectrum regarding some ideal, that are both right in some ways and wrong in others. In the grand scheme of things, we have like the Knights Morales on one end and the Brimcaps on the other end. I would say neither of them are right in their way of doing things. Too much rules versus everything is permitted, right? And the true path lies somewhere in the middle. That's where we have Keyfree and associates. But on a more micro scale, we see this with like Riche and Yuini, where Yuini's like, it has to be done this way. I actually suck and I need to be told what to do. And Riche is like, don't tell me what to do. I need to do things my way or I will lose my sense of self. And they both kind of have to learn, oh, I'm completely wrong, and meet somewhere in the middle. Yuini has to learn how to trust in himself and exercise his own agency and learn to use his weaknesses as his strengths. And Riche has to learn that it's okay to rely on other people, and doing as you're told doesn't mean losing who you are. And so they find somewhere in the middle, right? And I think you have a similar thing happening with Coco and Agate. Coco being this newcomer that just throws everything out of balance, and Agate being part of this high society very proper, desperate to prove herself kind of person, and they both are not their best selves at those extremes, and they are able to find common ground by learning from each other and meeting somewhere in the middle. So I can't wait to see what other pairs of people or ideals or organizations will get in the future. For many years, I have been of the belief that being at the extreme end of anything is not good, and that the most righteous way of doing anything is somewhere in the middle, leaving behind what doesn't serve you from either extreme, but taking the things from either extreme that can serve you and plowing forward in your own way, doing some secret third thing that's never even been thought of before. I think a lot of things can be thought of in that spectrum of ideas. If we take work, for example, on one end, you could be very lazy. On the other end, you could be a workaholic. Both of those will lead you to the grave. You have to find the balance somewhere in the middle. And the balance doesn't come from just standing in the middle. You have to move with it. Sometimes you're going to be a little lazier because that's what you need. You need to rest. Sometimes you're going to be more of a workaholic because you need the money or you have the time, right? I'm not putting that back up. Down the center, but not a straight shot down the center. Adjusting, staying around the center as you move. Okay, one final thing I'm going to say before we close out. I have noticed a handful of anthropomorphizations of silverwood trees. Not just the fact that their blood is what's used for casting spells, but there's mention of a forest of silverwood trees that was used to reanimate the dead. It doesn't really explain how the silverwood and the reanimation is connected, but like there's something there. There was the legend of a witch who fell in love with the silverwood tree. There's this border when the bodiless witch grabs agate, there's this border of eyes locked in silverwood branches. Okay? I'm seeing things. I see that with my eyeballs. Are silverwood trees, I don't think they're people. I don't necessarily think they're sentient, but I think they're somehow alive. Or that they can be bargained with. That perhaps there is something, some knowledge or power that they contain that you could trade something for. Maybe an eye, or some knowledge, or some skill. I'm building my theories. My bear traps have not yet closed. But I'm going to get to the bottom of whatever's happening with Kefri and his eyeball, and possibly the silverwood trees. I think I'm still missing a piece of connective tissue, but something's there. The thing is, I don't know if Orugio knows or not. I don't actually know like how involved he is in Kefri's life. Brimcaps, Kefri, silverwood trees, eyeballs, forbidden magic, memory wiping. Orugio? I don't know if he knows anything. I don't know if he's involved in this situation. But I haven't spent enough time with him to know if he would know about Kefri's deal. Anyway, see you guys later. Bye.